Well, hi, everybody.
Well, hello.
We're the Skeleton Crew, and today we are... Is this the last pterosaur? Are we there?
James, you asked this when we spun it.
Many more.
Oh, I did.
There's many more.
How many more?
At least one.
No, there's like 3 left.
Oh.
Yeah, there's Pterodactylus, there's Barbarodactylus, there's Dimorphodon.
Yeah.
Oh, I forgot. I always think we did Dimorphodon because it was in the Malta DLC video.
Mm-hmm.
Right. No, okay. All right, well, it's not the last pterosaur. Whatever, fine. We're doing a pterosaur. Watch the video if you want to see us talk about the pterosaur. This is the pterosaur. We're the Skeleton Crew. I have no.
That was a 10 out of 10 bit, James. Well done. Watch the video if you want to hear us talk about the pterosaur.
Are you familiar with our video? Because that's how they go.
You might want to watch them.
Dalton, you should release them.
We might introduce ourselves first.
Yes.
So much to say.
And given that I've seen our viewer metrics are declining with our early video retention, I'm going to keep this very brief. I will accept sole responsibility for the 12-minute long introductions about Topo Chico. I have no seltzer, but we do have pins. And
no seltzer,
they're
and I
on
must
Etsy.
pitch.
As we've said in multiple prior videos, but if this is your first time viewing us, welcome, first of all. Second, we've got some pins. We're selling off some excess supply from Midwest Gaming Classic. The pins look fantastic. They are in limited supply. We are not planning to make more of these. So please, if you want a really cool enamel pin, they look beautiful. They're like printed in rose gold metal, right? That was what we went with? Yeah. They're really, really stunning, and they're fantastic. And they're available on our Etsy page. That's where you can go to find them. We do have other merch on Redbubble, but that's the sticker. Stickers are great. T-shirts are great. These pins, though, are really good. Yeah. Well, no, that's the Mamma Mia.
Pardon me.
Sorry, I know you don't speak Italian. Yeah. So, anyway, go there to buy our pins. So, if you already have a lot of Skeleton Crew merch, but you're looking for another way to support us, fear not. There are many. One of the best is to take a look at our Patreon page. We've got a bunch of perks for our Patreon backers. You'll be in the credits of every video. You can vote in polls, see some exclusive content, and most importantly, maybe be a member of the Skeleton Crew Discord server with other Skeleton Crew fans and paleo enthusiasts. And so if you're so inclined to support us, please consider checking that page out and see if you feel like you want to support us in that way. If not, but you want to show support to the channel, there's a bunch of other ways you can do that. Leave a comment, drop a like, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Every little bit helps us out, and we appreciate everything you guys do for us. Now,
fabulous.
That's enough about you. Now, more about me. I'm Dr. James Napoli. I'm a No, I'm not. I'm not a postdoc. I'm an instructor, goddammit. I am a research instructor at Stony Brook University's Renaissance School of Medicine, where I teach human anatomy to health science professionals. Students. Right now I'm teaching a course for a group of wonderful early dental students. I've taught courses for PA students and physical therapy students, and I may also be part of the course for MD students, for medical students as well in the future. We'll see what happens next year.
My name is Amelia Zietlow. I'm a PhD candidate at the American Museum of Natural History. Most of my job involves staring at a computer screen and getting upset about it.
My name is Scott Johnston. I'm the vertebrate paleontology fossil preparator and technician at Harvard University's Museum of Comparative Zoology. But recently, most of my job has basically been HVAC. We've been doing a lot of stuff with our dust collection system at Harvard, making sure that everything is up to snuff. So I've been walking out a lot of ductwork and pointing at things with a ruler up in the ceiling a lot recently.
My name's Alex Rubenstall. I'm a piece of driftwood being pulled by a tide I can't see by forces I don't understand. Currently, I am washing gently against the shores of the Yale University, where I'm a PhD candidate.
Fascinating. I remain Dalton Meyer, a PhD candidate also at this here Yale University. And together, we're the Skeleton
Crew.
Indeed we are. I don't know what that means.
It means we're going to talk about a pterosaur today.
What pterosaur are we talking about? I ask because I was not privy to conversations about how to pronounce its name earlier.
I think we're talking about Tapejara. But we'll discuss that.
Okay.
Because it's hard to learn about this animal, but it's not hard to see it in this game, at least.
It's not hard to look at either.
I think it's kind of hard to look at.
Yeah.
It has some very pretty patterns.
It looks like a Star Wars character a little bit.
It very much does.
That's not its fault, though. I think
Most pterosaurs look like Star Wars characters to some degree.
This
a
one
lot of Star
especially
Wars
in my mind,
characters
though.
are modeled off of prehistoric fauna.
Indeed.
Like the Parasaurolophus Jedi.
Yes.
Coleman
and
Trevor,
the
some respect
AT-ATs.
on his name.
Coleman Trevor.
Coleman Trebor.
with a B.
Oh, Trevor.
I was about
okay.
to say, the Parasaurolophus dude just has the name of a business major.
He gets plugged by Django Fett.
He does.
Low diff. No, the AT-ATs are...
Oh, you missed one. You missed one.
I'll catch him on the...
Okay.
He's got
No,
a
what
good
what are the AT-ATs?
They're apparently were partially inspired by like Paraceratherium.
Yeah, Paraceratherium.
Really?
Yeah.
I
Although
thought
at
that
the
they were
time-
just camels.
At the time called Belucatherium, but
Yeah. No, there's a lot. There's like sauropod cervical vertebra and starship designs.
That one I know about.
There's all
Yeah.
sorts of fun
Well, there's
things.
literal sauropod cervical vertebrae being the crate dragon.
true.
So,
Well-
oh, sorry. Go on, please.
Well, so before I mentioned that I don't know how to pronounce the name of this animal, and so do we know? Is this a known quantity?
I'm sure
My
it's known by
understanding is that, somebody knows, but we don't know. There's two possibilities.
Cool.
One is what Wikipedia says, which is objectively cool, which is that it means the Lord of the Ways in like the Pathfinder kind of way, like they know which way to go. An alternate translation, however, is just Pathman.
Pathman.
He knows the path. He
That-
is the man.
That translation is courtesy of the redescription of a related animal that we will get to momentarily. Because we also had a difficult time in looking into the etymology of this to try to figure out exactly how it is pronounced. Because I have heard both Tapejara and Tapejara. And I was trying to see if there was a nice etymology of the Tupi word or words that actually go into the formation of its name. And this was difficult to find because the description of Tapejara is not really available online. But Tapejara or Tapejara is
Or
kind
Tapejara.
of... Or Tapejara.
I've also
Is a little bit of a moot point because this animal is not Tapejara. This
What?
is Tupendactylus.
Is it?
Say it
Whoa.
isn't so.
It is, unfortunately, and this is actually this is a mistake that gets made very, very, very frequently. This is, I think, basically a good analogy for this is an Oviraptor Cetipodi situation where, like, almost every time you see Tapejara, and it's called Tapejara, it's actually Tupendactylus. Walking
think
with
pretty
Dinosaurs
much.
does it. Ark does it.
I remember the Jurassic Park 3 toy series does it. I had their toy
But-
Tapejara.
There can be some forgiveness levied for this, I think,
Right.
because it wasn't. Tupendactylus was not named until 2007, whereas the species Tupendactylus imperator, formerly Tapejara imperator, was named in 1997. So there was a decade where we thought this was Tapejara.
That is fair.
Right. So it was a second species of Tapejara or Tapejara or Tapejara, right?
Yes.
So yeah, it's not exactly like the Cetipodi thing is similar a little bit, but I think the critical difference there is Cetipodi was referred to colloquially as Oviraptor for a long time. It wasn't ever officially identified as that. It was called like an Oviraptorid, and sometimes in some text in these articles, like as an Oviraptor, but lowercase, like not as a genus name, but like as a family level identification. But Cetipodi's never been considered a species of Oviraptor. So yeah, I mean, it's definitely a forgivable mistake to be calling this Tapejara.
It is.
Yeah. But it is, I mean, to a T, Tupendactylus. But Tupendactylus, right?
Yes.
To a capital T. It's the genus name, and you do that. That was a really stupid joke.
Man, Scott, Jesus Christ.
I was going for capital P for pterosaur.
Oh man,
We're operating on all brain cells.
So what does Tupendactylus mean?
Oh, I didn't look up that one. Sorry, I'm still trying to figure out.
I can take this.
I'm trying to figure out what is actually different between them because I don't.
It's mostly the crest.
It's very much the crest.
I see that
size.
the crest. I see that the crest is different. I guess I'm just not clear on how much of Tapejara is broken versus real.
My understanding is quite a lot of Tapejara is real. Like, I mean, there's the cast that's like, there's a picture of this cast on Wikipedia, but that looks like it's a real specimen to me. It doesn't look like it's been reconstructed. So I think it's fairly complete.
Yeah, no, the bony, while the bony portions of both crests, and certainly of Tupendactylus, the bony portion doesn't reflect the entire crest anatomy. It might also not for Tapejara, but in either case, the bones that we do have are very different.
It's got that like really characteristic deep heel-shaped lower jaw. Like both of them have that.
Both of them have that, yeah. Which, I mean, they are close relatives.
Yes. But to answer your question of what Tupendactylus means, Tupendactylus means Tupan finger, which is named after the Tupi god of thunder.
That's cool. I like that these names are Tupi.
It's pretty neat.
There's a lot of good names.
And the species name Imperator, James can tell you a bit about that one.
I can, because unfortunately it was removed from a paper that I wrote that dealt with something else named Imperator. Imperator is often Latinized as, often translated as emperor, which is not strictly speaking correct. One of the fun things about Roman history, there's a brief Roman history aside. Basically,
it's his Roman Empire, everybody.
I'm sorry, Alex. I'm sorry. It is my personal Roman Empire. The way that, and this is perhaps worth noting for anybody living in any Western country in 2024, when the Roman Republic died, it wasn't like they created a new title and office to give to the first Emperor Augustus. The designation of these people as emperors, in the sense that we now understand it, is kind of retroactive. There was a lot of kind of denying that the person had been made a king, because they would have just called him a king. There was nothing categorically different about what they were doing. Like now we would say that amount of territory we'd call an empire.
They did have a literal word for king.
They did, which was Rex, and that was political suicide. And based on the way things went for a lot of Roman emperors, would have probably been literal suicide as well, if they had called themselves a king. They couldn't do that. It was always kind of trying to deny and reassure everybody that this wasn't an autocrat of some sort. This isn't a king. It's just that this person has all of these powers and responsibilities. We've just conferred them these titles. Imperator was one of the titles, and Imperator is Latin for commander, like a military commander would be the Imperator. That has now become translated as emperor because that is the ultimate etymology of the English word emperor. And so because Imperator was like this primary title that was often used to refer to the people who are now called the Roman emperors, we often think that the word really means that, but the word has a distinct military connotation. If, for instance, a fascist government were to take control of the United States, and like thousands of years later we were referencing this, it's possible that we'd be referring to the concept of an emperor as like commander-in-chief. And like thinking that literally means autocrat in control of a large portion of territory with dictatorial powers, when that literally is just a title that was given to the American president, right? For context. Another one, which is now used by the Pope, because, there's a pretty direct line there too, is Pontifex Maximus. The Pope's Twitter account is just @Pontifex, which I think is very funny. But Pontifex Maximus is Latin for the main build or the chief builder of bridges. It was just another one of these titles referring to the role in coordinating major construction projects. I don't know how that became attached to the religious head of the Catholic Church. this is all to say, Tupendactylus imperator probably is intended to mean the like emperor thunder god finger or Tupan finger, but could also more strictly be translated as like the commanding Tupan finger.
Is the Pope not
commander.
a bridge between God and man?
Depends on who you ask.
Maybe. Wars have been fought over that.
Well,
They have been, yes.
yeah, by Protestant dogs, but I guess.
Yeah.
Oh, you silly.
Well, thank you.
cat.
That was so interesting, James.
Thank you, Alex.
Oh,
Well, and it should be
looks
noted
cool.
that Imperator is the animal depicted here, T. Imperator.
Yes.
There's a second species, T. navigans, which has a taller and thinner crest and is smaller.
And that one's from a gorgeous fossil.
Beautiful
Oh my
specimen.
gosh. And
Wow, yeah.
yeah, and it kind of shows that because there's been a debate for a while of exactly what, like, how much soft tissue would be infilling that kind of outlined crest on things like Tupendactylus and Tupendactylus imperator, I guess, specifically. And then Tupendactylus navigans was found. It was just like, this much. And it was like, oh, thank you. Because it's stunning. Absolutely beautiful specimen. And that's also one of the ones that has nice feather imprints.
Yes, we have. I mean, we have feathers on Tupendactylus imperator specimens as well.
But isn't the Navigans one the one that has like the definitive, like, oh man, these are feathers one?
That one might be the one that has the branching filaments.
Yeah.
Yes.
An important specimen to discuss.
It is. There is a specimen while we're on the topic of feathers. We have this one here of Imperator, which shows filaments on the base of the crest. That on the back side of this posterior bony base, the actual bony portion of the crest, I'll outline with my mouse, but we'll have a figure up to show it. The bony portion is this part that sticks back here behind the head, and then there is kind of a big triangle of bone, and then a thinner strut that kind of goes up and ends at some point in here. And on the underside of at least the back end of the crest, there were feathers, but there are no feathers preserved from kind of the interior of the fleshy part of the crest. Oddly enough, something they've kind of done, I don't want to say right on this, but they've given the crest a scaly texture as opposed to making it keratinous, which does, indicate that it's fleshy in nature. I believe there are arguments that some parts of the Tupendactylus crest were keratinous, but there is a fleshy part. But given that pterosaurs, I don't know if any pterosaurs preserve any scales. I would expect maybe naked flesh to be the more likely interpretation of what's going on in there, but at least it's consistent with the rest of this model. So.
Speaking of naked flesh, the discovery of the Tupendactylus feathers was kind of fortuitous because there was a paper that came out a year or two before it that posited that pterosaur filaments and pycnofibers were in fact collagen fibers, degraded collagen fibers. I think that was Unwin. And that these animals were like bare skin. Now, this was not widely accepted, and to me, it kind of reminded me very much of the dinosaur. Feathers aren't feathers; they're degraded collagen. But this came along as well as a pretty extensive description of feather types in, I think, Jeholopterus or a close relative.
I think it was Jeholopterus, yeah.
But also, this paper, I think they have melanosomes. They found melanosomes in the feathers along the back of the neck or the base of the crest. I think they give like a rufous coloration to it, but maybe it's been a minute.
They made so many green ones, and all the green ones are so ugly.
It looks like camo coloration. This one looks like it's surfing in Vietnam. As a Huey.
It's upsetting because some of the other ones are like very lovely and have these like beautiful butterfly wing. Like, yeah, that head crest I love, but like I hate that it's on this baby puke green.
Yeah. I fear
that's a good sound.
This animal, perhaps the most of any pterosaur we've covered in the game so far, I think suffers from lacking feathers. Like, this animal with feathers is quite a pretty animal, and this animal naked is just butt ugly. I really hate it. I really don't like looking at it.
It's like the toothlessness. I feel like the toothy ones look okay unfeathered.
Featherless.
And like this, and the pterosaurs largely are like you don't have teeth, you should have feathers, bird. You know, yes, they're not birds, but no, something's off. The vibe, it does not pass the vibe check.
No.
I mean, I do think some of it is like, it just has kind of a giant ugly head. Like, I mean, I'm sure the display structure was attractive to members of its own species, but it's not to me.
No.
Yeah, I'm not falling for it. I just
I
think
everybody.
it's giving like big frog, like, you know, the kind, like those, what are they, the devil toads or whatever?
Beelzebufo?
Wait, yeah, that's Beelzebufo. What's the thing that's
You mean like the African bullfrogs and stuff?
The Madagascar frog. I think it's a Madagascar horned toad or something.
Pac-Man frogs.
Pac-Man frogs. That's what I was going for. Right. It looks. It's like it's disproportionate in an accurate way, but that doesn't make me like it more aesthetically. Like it is disproportionate in a way where it kind of looks ugly and off-putting.
Oh.
Yeah, like there are, and I'll just throw this in general because I don't think we can necessarily get permission to use this, but like there are lovely feathered depictions of Tupandactylus that just look very reasonable and very good.
I think Pac-Man frogs are very...
I think that we should dovetail this fun feather conversation into some phylogeny. What is this guy?
Now this here creature is what you call a bat.
Basically.
No,
that is true.
It's not a bat.
It's not true.
And I did not invoke that voice to make fun of folksy wisdom, which is often valuable and useful. This is a pterosaur. Egads, I know. I only said it a million times. So one of the major groups closely related to dinosaurs, more closely related to dinosaurs than crocs, but they are neither dinosaurs nor are they birds. They're a special third thing. And they're all dead now. Except in the case if you're a Civil War impersonator and you shoot one, that's the only real one. Those are the only ones that are left. No. As we've talked about before, the group starts out generally small, long tail, short neck, littler head. They're evolving from terrestrial archosaurs, things like Lagopitids. And then there's this interesting thing that happened, which is in the Jurassic, we have the emergence of more of these long-tailed groups. There's transitions within some of these groups where the heads become larger, the development of a gigantic single opening that is the nares and antorbital fenestra united, which is the monofenestratans, reduction of the tail, and by the end of the early Jurassic, by the middle Jurassic actually, we have the pterodactyloids, which kind of are the shape of what pterosaurs will be. Short tail, long neck, long head. Come the Cretaceous, that's all that's left. And while in the Jurassic, they don't usually get a wingspan above like 3 meters, which is big, but that's also pretty rare. In the Cretaceous, they say, we're going to be big now. And there are a lot of them. Now, you can split kind of the main pterodactyloids group. So there are these really early things, ctenocasmids, filter-feeding things, etc. Once you get into the meaty Cretaceous clades, not that there are Cretaceous ctenocasmids, but that's besides the point. You have one branch which includes the ornithochirids, so things like Merodactylus, which we've covered, and their relatives, the pteranodontids, which are things like Nyctosaurus and Pteranodon. The other lineage, which originates at the same time, are the Asdarcoids. The early members of this group are toothed, things like Sungaripterus. And as the group goes on, they appear to become edentulous. So there are the gigantic classic Asdarc, things like Quetzalcoatlus, but closely related to those in a group sometimes called Tapejara morpha. Them and the other Asdarchids are they Tapejarids, which are mostly, but not exclusively, South American edentulous pterosaurs like this. I think Thalassodromines are part of that group, which have these really cool, long crests and is a very unfortunate name because we no longer think that they are like fish hunters, and they had a cool ocean-based name. But yeah, so they're pretty diverse. I think they make it to the end of the Cretaceous too. Well, their fossils are a little scrappier.
I'm actually not 100% sure.
I think they do.
Wikipedia has it up to 85.
They get close. They're in the late Cretaceous. And yeah, so they're in Brazil. They're in a few other countries, I think. I think China has a few.
There is a Chinese one.
In fact, I think the earliest ones are from China. A lot of pterosaur groups, I think by virtue of China having a good record for delicate fossils, appear to originate in China.
I mean, most theropod groups too.
Yeah.
At some like
so what
earliest representatives.
we know
are in
early
there.
members are from China. Whether they're literally evolving there, unknown. Could be. But yeah, so Tapejara itself is nested within Tapejaridae, and they're close relatives of Tupandactylus. But they're not the same.
No.
They sure are close, though.
They sure are close. That is phylogeny. That's where it goes. These guys are edentulous. They have big crests, and they also have like a kinked dentary. Kind of cool, like ventrally deflected. It's neat.
It has implications for their lifestyle.
Implications?
Implications, indeed.
They were living the lifestyle.
Indeed. They were living a very unique lifestyle for pterosaurs. Being that...
They had pterosaur key parties.
Fighting for my life to make a segue actually work in this goddamn channel.
I know. Every time one of us wants to segue, the other four, like, the one person trying to segue basically becomes Matt Damon in that gif from Saving Private Ryan, just, like, crouched down with his hands over his ears, screaming.
So, let me see if I can get back into that.
Let's see.
These guys were living a very interesting lifestyle when it comes to pterosaurs, and a pretty unique one is proposed by at least the ones that we have preserved in the fossil record, in that it seems like tapejarids were, if not omnivorous, or let me phrase that better. It seems like tapejarids were at the very least omnivores, if not herbivorous pterosaurs. Namely, it seems like a lot of them might have been frugivores, fruit specialists. Which is very sadly not depicted in the game. It has them eaten from the fish feeder, and honestly, it looks ridiculous. Even the grabbing a fish animation, it looks like he's missing. It looks like he's not really getting it. Like, this animal is trying so hard. It also, I must say, also that pose that it's doing, I hate. I hate when they go straight up like that. It's so
like
bad.
They go upside down. It's really bad.
It's also, has anybody else noticed that these guys, when they're resting, they like stand on their metacarpals? It's pretty bad. Like, they fold their wings up in a way that their metacarpals are flat on the ground.
Ew.
It's bad. Like, I don't think that's a pose that they could not achieve, but like showing it as like the typical resting pose. See? Yeah.
Yeah.
Honestly, I could see that for like if they're tucking themselves up to like go to bed or something like that could be like a posture. But like as a habitual resting posture, I don't think that's super accurate. They made them knuckle walkers. It's weird. They're not really.
Now, Scott,
wrist walkers.
In addition to the frugivore thing, I think I've read that they've been proposed to be shellfish eaters too.
Yes, and that kind of goes hand in hand with this, because so let's give a little bit of background on this. So a lot of this initial discussion comes from a paper by Theodore Fleming and Karen Lips in 91. This paper from 91, which is called, which has a very fun word that we're going to learn about here, which is called angiosperm endozookery, where sorry, let me say that again. Angiosperm endozookery. We're pterosaurs Cretaceous seed dispersers. Now, your skeleton crew word of the day is endozookery, which is the reproductive strategy of relying on animals to disperse seeds. It's a really fun word to say. And yeah, this is a strategy that is used by both angiosperms and gymnosperms, because while we typically think of fruits as being an angiosperm thing, gymnosperms also have fruits, giant air quotes, and we're talking about plants, so I'll throw this over to Emil.
Finally, another plant hour. It's been so long since we've had plant hour. I promise it will not actually be an hour. But the reason for the quote-unquotes is that gymnosperms, kind of by definition, don't have fruits. So to back up a couple of steps, modern plants today, among plants that have seeds, there's two main kinds. There's the flowering plants, angiosperms, and the non-flowering plants, or the cone plants, which are the gymnosperms, and their names mean covered seed or naked seed, and that has to do with how the seed is dispersed. So gymnosperms typically, and it gets really complicated because plants are basically aliens, and the way, like almost literally like a xenomorph, like they have this cycled life where one part of the life cycle is spent as haploid, which means they only have half as many chromosomes as normal, and the other half is spent as diploid. And those are two separate individuals. Like, it's not one individual phases through both stages. They alternate, the alternation of generations. Very fun and hard to grasp fully. It took me a long time to understand it, but it's really interesting, and I would highly recommend looking into it if you are intrigued. But the gist here is that part of that is that so all the plants that you see mostly are going to be in that diploid or double chromosome phase, which is like what animals are. Animals are diploid. We got 2 copies of chromosomes at a time. Most plants that you see are in that phase. The exception is mosses. Mosses are backwards. They live most of their lives as haploid. But anyways, so typical trees and plants that you see around are going to be diploid, and we call that life form, like it's almost literally an alien, like that kind growth form, I guess, or stage or whatever, the sporophyte. And that means the plant that produces spores. Because what's happening is the diploid phase is producing spores, which independently develop into the haploid or half chromosomed things, which are called gametophytes, which are plants that produce gametes. Gametes are the sex cells, the sperm and egg, the male female eggs, or the male and female eggs. The male and female, quote unquote, because that doesn't really exist for plants, really, technically.
I thought it did exist for plants.
Kind of, more so than it does for fungus. Or fungi, I guess. Fungi, you got pluses and minuses and like a billion different combinations of sexes. It's insane. It is not binary on any branch of the tree of life. But in plants, it is more similar to animals in that there is a female equivalent and a male equivalent, in that there are sperm cells and egg cells, kind of. And so the gametophyte phase of the life stages is what's going to produce those sex cells, and those are what then combine with each other to develop into the sporophyte, and that's how the cycle goes. If the editor is so inclined, I did a long time ago make a graphic of this that kind of sort of shows what's happening here.
Send it in the Discord, and I'll put it in when I edit this. Yeah,
I'll try to remember to do that. Yeah. But so the difference, and why this is relevant, is the difference breaks down to how the resultant seed is being housed. So the product of the gametes fusing is the seed, or it's the baby embryo for the sporophyte. And in gymnosperms, the naked seeds, these seeds are just kind of hanging out, usually on a cone-like structure, but they're not enclosed. So pine trees, for example, anything with a pine cone is relying on the wind to disperse the seeds from the cones, or like just general jostling of the cones will set the seeds free. And that structure that is holding the seeds is part of the plant that has produced the spores, because remember, the parent plant is a sporophyte, and what's happening is the gametophyte in seed plants is its life cycle is completely happening within the sporophyte. It's completely dependent on the sporophyte to live. This is where I said mosses are the other way around. What's happening is that the sporophyte is completely dependent on the moss. So if you ever see those little brown things growing out of moss, those are the sporophytes. They're completely dependent on the haploid gametophyte green stuff that's helping it to live. And then ferns are a halfway point where mostly what you think of when you think of a fern, that is a sporophyte, but the gametophyte phase is independent. It's not happening on that plant. It's not dependent on it. They're very tiny. They're hard to see, but if you know what you're looking for, you can find them, and they're pretty cool. The sporophyll is the name of the structure on the cone plants. That's like, I guess, is the cone. And so basically it's just, the seed is just in that. Angiosperms, flowering plants, are quote unquote more advanced, more derived, in that there's a lot more happening with respect to how they're producing, and they're not producing necessarily, but how they're dispersing their seeds. So same thing, the sporophyte is the dominant life phase. Their gametophytes are completely dependent on the parent sporophyte. And they take place like within their respective parts, because typically they have to be. In some way within a flower, the male and female parts are separated. In some plants, you've got male and female flowers completely separate. In most flowers that you probably know, they're different parts on the same flower. Some plants are actually completely like they are either male or either female. Again, whole range of options here in the plant tree of life. But so the gametophyte phase is happening completely within, like in the male phase is happening completely within the pollen. Like a pollen grain, I think, is technically the gametophyte. Like, it's really weird, and I don't 100% remember. But I think technically the grain of pollen is the gametophyte, and that contains at least 3 sperm, I think, because there's a couple stages that need to happen for it to actually get through to the egg on the other end. On the female part of it, you get an ovary, basically. So you're getting a structure that is typically, this is gross, fleshy to some degree, in that it's supplying, it's supplying much more nutrition and protection to the developing embryo once that happens, once it is fertilized. And what's cool, and then this ovary with the seed inside, usually, not always, think of a strawberry, the seeds are on the outside, it's still an ovary though. Although I'm not sure if the fruit part offhand is developing from that or not, because fruits are very complicated, which is bringing us to fruits. They're very complicated because there is a lot of different parts to a flower and the structures surrounding the eggs and the developing seeds. So there's a lot of different pieces that the plant can evolve to, not that there's any direction evolution, but there's a lot of different parts that evolution can tinker with to help the seed either be dispersed or to grow or to whatever. Usually, the fruit will help the seed to disperse in some way. So we're used to thinking about fruits as fun, sweet things that may or may not have seeds in them. But it's more broad than that. It's, again, it's literally just the ovary of the plant. So we're coming up on Halloween, so think about that when you're carving your pumpkin, of what you're actually doing. The pumpkin is the ovary full of the seeds. And the pilk if you're unlucky. Yeah.
There's always
so
pilk.
Not always. So if we think, like using pumpkins as an example, we pick the pumpkins that are nice and bright and orange because they look pretty. And that's why we're choosing them. Or if you think about at the grocery store, what color are the bananas that you pick? Is there a strategy to which ones you're picking? Why is that? What does it mean when a fruit... What does it mean when a fruit changes color? It's telling you something. In this case, telling us animals, like, hey, this fruit is good to go. And that helps the fruit be dispersed in nature. What's happening is turning a bright color is indicating to animals that disperse the seeds for the plant that fruit is ready for them to take and do what they're going to do with it. Sometimes they eat it, sometimes they just carry it around. Fruits don't always have to be eaten by an animal to be dispersed, so some really good examples, sticky burrs, like that's the fruit technically, but it's not, you're not eating it, it's just getting stuck to your clothes or getting stuck to fur for an animal that's needed for like beers and stuff. Impatient flowers are really fun. They and others in that group basically have spring-loaded seed pods. So the purpose of the fruit, like if you touch them, they explode. And they throw the seeds everywhere. So again, you're not eating it, but they're still dispersing their seeds everywhere. And the last one, I forget what they're called, but there's some kind of big seed in not the States, but somewhere else. There's a huge seed that has like these big hooks on it, and what it does is it gets itself wedged into like the hooves of like antelope and stuff, and that's how it's brought somewhere else. So there's like 3 primary goals of the fruit: help the embryo develop, help it be dispersed somewhere else, and also protect it depending on the mode of dispersal. It's also why coconuts float. It helps get them away from the parent plant because they're out, usually on tropical islands. So they'll float some distance, get themselves away from their parents. So they're reducing competition and all that fun stuff. Fruit hour concluded.
Indeed. And so while we normally very much think of fruits as, like Amelia said, like the things you get at the grocery store, there are a bunch of gymnosperm, air quotes, fruits that, again, as Amelia explained, are not true fruits. Things like ginkgo fruits, things like yews, that on mature yews, they have like a little, it looks like a red, like little fruit thing around the seed. Not a real fruit. Cycads, sea grapes, and a very good example that I'm a huge fan of is junipers for their berries, which we flavor gin. And another fun fact about sorry, I think that one of my children got stuck in his new litter box. I'm going to see if he can figure out how to get out. He's kind of freaking out in there. Okay, he's calmed down. Another fun fact about the air quotes fruits between the angiosperms and gymnosperms is, even though most of what we eat are angiosperm fruits, gymnosperms actually more heavily rely on endozookery than angiosperms do. 64% of gymnosperms rely on it, and only 28% of angiosperms do.
Is
which
this
super neat?
Is endozookery, based on the name, I'm guessing that it's not specifically that they're relying on animals, it's that they're relying on animals to eat them.
Yes, it's the consumption of, zoo inside an animal. Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. So those are very different things.
Yes. So nowadays, the most important fruit eaters are birds and mammals, and within mammals, it's specifically bats and primates are really big ones. But bats and primates, obviously, only evolved after the Cretaceous Paleogene mass extinction. And birds definitely could have been seed distributors for a while in the Mesozoic. That we know Archaeopteryx first evolved 150 million years ago in the late Jurassic. And there is a species of late Jurassic bird from Jeholornis, specifically the type specimen of Jeholornis prima, which I'm slightly happy and slightly sad that it's that species that has the cool feature that we'll talk about here, which is that it has around 50 seeds preserved in its crop. And the reason why I'm slightly happy and slightly sad that it's Jeholornis prima is because part of me really, really wanted this to be Jeholornis palma penis, just so we could say that one a bunch on here. But yeah, Jeholornis also has some like I guess, air quotes, beak, I guess more just mouth anatomy that you would expect from a seed eater. Namely, it has a little bit of a downturned snout. The front part of it is edentulous, and it seems like the teeth a little bit farther back are a bit more adapted for durophagy. They're a bit shorter and rounder and more bulbous. But yeah, it's very interesting that this is, at least as far as I know, the only like Mesozoic bird that we know of that has like definitive, like, I was going to say stomach contents, but I guess internal contents of seeds, which is super cool. But a lot of these papers that are proposing that pterosaurs were doing this were written before this specimen was discovered. Now, several of the fruit-bearing lineages of angiosperms diverged during the, air quotes, mid-Cretaceous, as we are huge fans of here, during the Cretaceous terrestrial revolution that we've talked about many times on the channel. And what's really interesting is that there seems to be, there's a major time gap between the evolution of, air quotes, fruit, or I guess fruit-bearing plants, and the presence of dispersers, or at least specialized fruit dispersers, especially because things like ginkgos and cycads go back to the Permian. And I was texting our group chat earlier talking about how I think it's really neat that there is seemingly a ghost niche lineage that goes back that far, because like there are so many animals that have co-evolved with plants to be, I mean, it's the reason why primates have better color vision than most other mammals is to better identify, presumably, yes. It is one of the hypothesized reasons why primates have better color vision than most other mammals, is to better identify ripening fruit. Because ripening fruits are almost always a shade of red orange, something like that. There are definitely ones that are more yellow, but a lot of them are kind of those warmer colors, red, orange, yellow, things like that.
Maybe why bird and pterosaur have big brain.
Maybe why bird and pterosaur have big brain. Yes, the hypothesis was to see that better. So this paper hypothesizes that at least some pterosaurs must have been frugivores, and frugivores are specialized fruit eaters. I do find it interesting that this paper does specifically say that, like, we do not have fossil evidence of this, but it was like, from all of these other things, it stands to reason that these things, they must have been there. And Alex actually mentioned in the Geosternbergia episode that flying tetrapods are the most, and I'll make sure I get my pronunciation correct on this, or James will jump down my throat. Speciose.
It's a different word. I'm not jumping down your...
Specious.
If you say a different word, specious, that's a different word. They're the most morally questionable of the tetrapod groups.
Well, it's also correct.
Why don't they stay on the ground? Mm-hmm. What are they trying to hide up there?
Get down here!
Right, get down here right now.
But yes, flying tetrapods are the most speciose and diverse groups. That birds and bats are incredibly diverse groups. And we would expect that, like, by that logic, would not be surprised if pterosaurs were around as diverse as they are. And whenever we get these deposits of these weird environments like Jehol and stuff, where it's these like in densely forested inland lakes, we get weirder stuff.
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, it stands to reason that there's a whole bunch of these guys that were specialized for different lifestyles than we normally see with the ones that are just in nearshore marine environments.
I think it's worth, along Scott's argument, I think it's worth keeping in mind also the distribution of like bird fossils prior to the Miocene is also enormously skewed towards like shorebirds, fragments of shorebirds, tibiotarsi, and
yeah.
it's not until you get like exceptional preservation places like Messel, or these
Green
inland
River,
lakes, Green River, and even in the Cretaceous, like the Ischian, you're like, oh, there's all this diversity in these birds. It's not just all shoreline birds, but it's like there's biases in the fossil record that are limiting our understanding. Maybe
It's almost like that. Another interesting niche that pterosaurs don't actually seem to ever do, which I do kind of find interesting after it was pointed out to me, is that none known are raptorial. Which so like a raptorial pterosaur would be one that hunts other pterosaurs in midair, and there's no evidence that any of them are specialized for predation upon like relatively large prey.
right.
So there is a little bit of an asterisk on that, in that there actually is a close-ish relative that we mentioned earlier that has been hypothesized to be a raptorial pterosaur, which is the thalassadromes.
Okay.
Have they?
Okay, I have the full paragraph here. I can read it.
Okay.
Or the full section of this section on the paleoecology of Thalassadromidae.
Is that when
This opens the
pterosaur book?
Yeah.
Cool.
this. I'll resume play just in case we want to keep this, but we don't have to because I am reading verbatim from copyrighted material. So keep that in mind. But in any case, this opens the question of how else Thalassadromius and its kin avoided going hungry. Skim feeding aside, little has been said about thalassadromid foraging methods. Unwin and Martil, 2007, proposed that they may have lived a stork-like lifestyle, an idea that links their anatomical similarities to the potentially stork-like foraging methods of Asdarchids. See next chapter. Like Asdarchids, the length and equal proportions of the forelimbs and hind limbs and rather elongate jaws of thalassadromids seem well suited to roaming overland and opportunistically grabbing small animals and other foodstuffs. It should be noted that their short, relatively flexible necks are different from the long, stiff necks of their Asdarchid cousins, however. This may infer some differences in foraging strategies between these groups. Perhaps the stouter necks of thalassadromids afforded them more generalized dining habits and sources of food, which are thought to be somewhat restricted for Asdarchids because of their long, stiff necks. The differences in jaw structure and skull construction between Thalassadromius and Tupaxara may also reflect some dietary differentiation, with the rather lightly built skull of Tupaxara perhaps better suited to handling relatively small or weak prey items. By comparison, the more rotund skull of Thalassadromius suggests it was more adept at handling relatively large, feisty animals. Biomechanicist Mike Habib and I once pondered the possibility of Thalassadromius being able to subdue prey rather violently using its bladed, hooked jaws for delivering strong, crippling bites. Perhaps the concave palatal region and short mandibular symphysis provided additional room within its oral cavity for swallowing larger prey items whole. If so, this would make Thalassadromius a real rarity among pterosaurs, a raptor-like predator of small to medium-sized game. It may be best to not get too carried away with such notions until the anatomy and functional morphology of these forms is studied and documented in more detail.
Okay, pretty reasonable.
Yeah, pretty measured. I guess what I'm saying, and so first of all, the word raptorial, we had paused for a little bit to discuss what this word actually means. My best guess is that this winds up being a little bit idiosyncratic between groups, but it seems to generally refer to like a predator that's hunting fairly large things. It doesn't necessarily mean on the wing. As I learned from Wikipedia, raptorial is a term used for the appendages of bugs sometimes.
Yes, in praying mantises.
And praying mantises. And a paper that came out today about the whale Coronodon also referred to modern odontocetes as being raptorial hunters. So like orca, dolphin, sperm whales as being raptorial. So what I'm assuming they mean there is they hunt big prey and grab them with their mouth. Within birds, a raptorial bird would generally be like a bird of prey or a raptor. This is not a monophyletic group, unfortunately. In fact, I'm sorry. That's a great example of a polyphyletic group that works. That's not pachyderm. That's a great example. I don't know why nobody ever uses that one.
Because falcons are more closely related to parrots.
They are, and owls are not a part of that group either, really. And owls are often included as birds of prey because they're closely related to nightjars, as far as I recall.
And like some vultures are, and some not.
Like some vultures, I think, are actually closer to herons. Although I don't know if that result has been robustly supported. Bird phylogeny is surprisingly questioned.
I'm checking.
Please check.
According to Frank et al. 2023, strigiforms are sister to New World vultures, ospreys, and secretary birds.
To only New World vultures, though.
No, they're sister to the
and
clade
hawks
made
and
of
ospreys.
cathartiforms and itriforms. So, like,
I see.
yeah, that might be real. But yeah, no, definitely falcons, which are like sister to parrots and songbirds, which is wild.
Yeah.
And shrikes are raptorial too, right? Not
shrikes are raptorial and they're passerines.
Yeah, so it shows up.
I mean, they're
love
not
them
usually
so much.
They're not usually grouped within being raptors sensu stricto, but not that you can have a strictest sense of a polyphyletic group. But yeah, falcons are not like falcons are heavily convergent upon hawks and so like hawk is kind of a loaded term because what we usually call hawks in the U.S. are often called buzzards because they're not closely related to Old World hawks. But the problem is that's what Europeans. If you're a European, you probably if you say buzzard, you mean what we call a hawk, and if I say a buzzard, I mean a vulture because I'm an American. So,
right.
But anyway,
Old World vultures are like in hawks, right? And then like New World vultures are outside of hawks, and that group.
Yes, cathartiforms are something else, and it was thought for a long time, as far as I recall, that they were actually thought to be herons, like they're part of sicconomorphs.
I don't see that in any of the recent phylogeny.
I'm sorry, I don't mean herons. I mean storks.
Sure, I don't.
The first analysis, to my knowledge, that didn't find that result was in 2021.
I'm not seeing it in the more recent stuff, but I don't know. I'm not a bird person.
No, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised, but like, we talk a lot about squamates having unclear phylogenies among like modern animals, but it's probably worth noting that even the broader picture of phylogeny of modern birds is questioned in a lot of respects.
Squamate people wish they had the resolution of birds.
Well, I mean, I'm not saying it's worse, but I'm saying for how much work goes into them and how many like dedicated funds there are for studying birds, like we're having trouble placing a lot of these things confidently. Rapid radiation probably.
Yeah.
I'm sorry?
So don't mention the Hoatzin.
Oh, don't mention the I would never mention the Hoatzin.
Oh, I love those.
They're
but
great
anyway,
birds.
so
tragically hard to put on the tree.
It's such a cool
I thought
bird,
they were really good to put on a tree. They have little claws for it and everything.
And they use them to climb the whole phylogeny to move placement during their own ontogeny and between individuals. And genetically, whatever. Anyway.
I can't wait for in our comment section to be like, that's because birds are fake.
I know. That's the funniest joke.
That's so funny.
Birds aren't real. They're surveillance drones.
When's the last time you talked to your mom? The person who's commenting that video. Go have a nice conversation with your mom. Maybe your dad. Maybe you have a better relationship with your father. Do anything but leave that comment.
Or leave that comment. It's good for our engagement.
No.
Leave it and then go talk to your mom. But anyway, the point is, right, these birds have a hooked bill. They've got big talons on the feet often. We don't know that pterosaurs, like it's possible pterosaurs had some constraint preventing them from developing like prehensile raptorial feet like that. They never seem to. We're probably missing a lot of them, but we don't see a lot. We don't see pterosaurs with talons.
There are pterosaurs with prehensile hands.
There are.
Yeah, the monkey dactyl.
I don't think that's its real name, right?
No, it was just the I can never remember its real name. It's like how I called Chingosaurus Pinocchio Rex for the longest time because I couldn't figure out how to pronounce it.
It's some Darwinopterid, right? Like some.
I think so.
I think so. Yeah.
Okay.
So the hooked bill could happen in a pterosaur. Right?
Yes.
This idea of like a big hooked beak for ripping through flesh or something. We don't see any evidence of that. The only pterosaurs that seem to have specialization for preying on terrestrial animals are as darkids, right? There's no obvious or unambiguous pterosaur version of a hawk or an eagle, right?
And I would definitely say that that pterosaurs definitely have the ability to evolve some sort of like downturned, almost hooked-ish sort of beak. because that is something that we do see in some Tapejarids. Moving on to the rest of the point that I was making. This is not an admonishment of like,
No,
oh my
that's
god,
fine.
we got
Go
off.
ahead.
This was into part 2. So after the Fleming and Lips paper proposed that pterosaurs might have been seed distributors. There's a paper by Alexander Kellner, actually in the same year, in 91, that was about the skull of Tapejara, and points and kind of starts pointing the finger specifically at Tapejarids were well adapted to being frugivorous. So mainly Tapejara, and this kind of goes for Tapejarids in general, are really weird when it comes to pterosaurs. They lack a lot of features that we'd associate with other diets that we ascribe to pterosaurs. Namely, in piscivorous taxon, we expect the toothless ones to have very long, very slender beaks, such as seen in Geosternbergia and Pteranodon and stuff, or the toothed ones to have long, pointed, intermeshing teeth, like what we see in Rhamphorhynchus, and Tapejarids have neither of those. They have very short heads and short beaks. They don't have teeth, and their beaks are very strangely shaped. The insectivorous pterosaurs have also very short heads, even way shorter heads, but they have very wide mouths and have more peg-like teeth, like the Anuronathids, like we see in Jeholopterus in the game. And they do specifically say carrion feeding in this paper, or well, I guess he says points to carrion feeding in this paper, and I think that I could just generally go. This applies to carrion feeding, but also with just a lot of like larger, I guess, raptorial predation. It is possible, but it seems like they aren't necessarily built for it. A lot of carrion feeders have relatively long, flexible necks to really like get into carcasses. And the other major thing that's probably precluding them from this lifestyle is the inability to get in there. Namely, they have these giant head crests very close to the front of their face, that if you're trying to shove your head into a carcass, you want something that's kind of more narrow and wouldn't get caught up on everything. And pretty much all Tapejarids have these like very Tapejara itself has a relatively small head crest near the front of its face, but some of the ones like Tupandactylus, like you see here, are huge, and that would pretty much preclude this guy from like sticking his head deep into a body cavity to get some good morsely bits. But these guys do seem to be relatively well adapted to frugivory. Mostly in the beak shape. And I'll quote directly from the paper here that, and again, this is in reference to Tapejara specifically, but these are features with different units that we see in other taxa. Only the anterior 6 centimeters of the beak are functional, with concave, shallow excavations in the upper and lower jaws with sharp lateral edges. When the jaws were closed, only the pointed tips were in contact, leaving an oval gap or diastema behind. This would have made the perfect tool for picking or plucking fleshy fruits. And this is also something that we do see in specialized frugivorous birds sometimes as well. He goes on to say later in the paper that Tapejara also seems to have a kind of like a bulge in the lower jaw that could be an area of concentration of pressure to help crack through harder nuts or harder seeds and stuff like that, which is interesting because it's a similar feature that we see in Jeholornis. that is pretty definitively a fruit eater. And what I was really hoping would be a good, like, bow on this whole thing is I have heard some tale told of that there is a specimen of Sinopterus, which is a Chinese tapejarid that has gut contents that have seeds. For the life of me, I cannot find this. I would not be surprised if this exists. It really does seem like these guys were, again, at the very least, generalists like hornbills that have a strong predilection towards eating fruits and seeds and stuff, but will kind of eat anything that comes their way. There is also in the Kellner paper, he hypothesizes that like hornbills, they could use those kind of taller bills and stuff to help push their way through plant matter to get to the more select fruits and stuff, because hornbills do sometimes do that. But yeah, I cannot for the life of me find the Sinopterus paper that has stomach contents with seeds, which makes me sad. But yeah, that kind of concludes the diet talk, and I am fully on board with these guys being
Herbivores?
Possibly herbivorous pterosaurs, which I think is really, really neat, because pterosaurs are almost never depicted as anything besides piscivorous. Take this game. They're all piscivorous, with the exception of Jahornis.
And some of them can eat other meat.
Mm-hmm. And some of them can eat other meat, but they all need fish feeders, except Jahornis, which makes me very sad. And I really hope that for Jurassic World Evolution 3, we get some more variation in the diets of pterosaurs, because they really do all end up feeling like palette swaps or like model changes of the same thing. Also make Tapejara actually stand properly. It's weird and I don't like it. There's one final point. I don't put as much stake in this because this is definitely a fossil record is very incomplete sort of thing, but I do find it just, if anything, just kind of interesting that a lot of the tapejarids that we find end up being basically the size of the largest fruit bats. They're all like really close in wingspan. But then there are like 3 or 4 species that kind of really buck that. Tupandactylus being one of them. It's a pretty large pterosaur. I mean, it's small. Well, it's small for a pterosaur, but it's one of, if not the biggest tapejarid.
What is it, like a 4-meter wingspan?
Something like that.
Is there anything else to talk about?
I have, well, as a fun note, I had forgotten about the the grippy pterosaur, the quote unquote monkey dactylus. So I was figuring out what that was.
Please don't call it the grippy pterosaur.
It's Kunpangopterus, but calling it a monkey dactyl is not the most inappropriate of misnomers for it, because it is part of Wukongopteridae, which is named for Wukongopterus, which is itself named for Sun Wukong, the famous Monkey King from Journey to the West, the seminal Chinese story.
Incredible.
That's super cool.
That was just adapted into a game, right?
Yes,
a game that looks really fun.
Black Myth Wukong, which does look fun, which I also learned is not an adaptation of Journey to the West.
No.
But is like a sequel to Journey to the West.
Cool.
Of a different monkey. You are not playing as Wukong. You're not playing as Sun Wukong, at least. I think you play as Sun Wukong in the opening 10 minutes.
Cool.
And then you play as a second monkey following in the footsteps of Sun Wukong, who is much worse at everything than Wukong, so he doesn't have nearly as much cool powers as Sun Wukong does.
That makes sense, because if you were playing as Sun Wukong, there would be no game. There would be no challenge.
Stop the giant Buddha hand from space. You're like, no.
Oh, me? I'm just a silly monkey.
Indeed. I guess a final little point to make on this is kind of to bring the conversation back around to how it started with soft tissue and the crest and stuff. The Tupandactylus navigans specimen is one of, if not the only pterosaur specimen I know of that actually has a preserved Ranthotheca on the beak. And it's really cool that we can actually see that on there.
It's an amazing fossil.
That's pretty tight.
It's absolutely gorgeous. And it does show it being relatively close and constrained to the like shape of the bone. It definitely like kind of expands it a bit on the front of the top and bottom beaks, or the top and bottom jaw rather. So it kind of would have on this model kind of filled in and kind of made the angle of that a little bit more gradual, but like that's splitting hairs.
Well, before we move on, there is a note I wanted to make.
Okay.
Yes.
Which is about why are we not in the Romualdo Formation? And this relates to the fact that we're not actually looking at Tapejara. So Tapejara itself is known from the Romualdo Formation, which is where you dig it up in the game. And that's where it's from with all of the other Romualdo pterosaurs and dinosaurs and so forth that we know about. But Tupandactylus, both species of Tupandactylus, are known from the Crato Formation. And the Crato Formation is a Lagerstätten, which we've talked about in the past. It's one of these conservat Lagerstättens, which means that it's known for extraordinary preservation. And it's funny that we mentioned how important like lake deposits have been for understanding kind of weird pterosaurs. And it's also important for this particular kind of weird pterosaur because it's a lake deposit. Guess what? The Crato Formation is a giant lake deposit. There was some debate. There's a lot of debate actually about exactly the depositional environment of the Crato Formation. But recent work in 2021, Ribeiro et al. Towards an actualistic view of the Crato Conservat Lagerstätte paleo environment, reviewed the fossil content, not just the vertebrates, but the invertebrates, the plants. They reviewed the geology, the stratigraphy. The Crato Formation underlies the Romualdo, so it's a little bit older. And they came to a conclusion that, so it had previously been proposed to potentially be like a deep lake, possibly a mangrove swamp, possibly like a eutrophic lake. But what they determined is that it was a large, shallow lake in a kind of semi-arid environment that would seasonally shrink and grow depending on water availability. And that could support the growth of microbial mats in the lake, which helps to facilitate the preservation. There's very few modern analogs to this environment, but one that they pointed to was Lake Chad. So if you look at photos of Lake Chad, it's a big lake in Africa, and it is kind of seasonally changing. And so I've tried to reconstruct a large lake. There's some beautiful art by Vitor Silva, who did art for this paper, showing the different seasons of this lake and how at the margins of the lake, away from the water, you get into this arid xeric environment where there's fewer plants. And as you get closer to the lake, you get more plants. And so there's kind of this ring of life around this lake that then kind of slowly aridifies outwards from it. But it's another one of these these beautiful lakes that give us so much information. Other fossils from it include beautiful insects and fish. If you like lizards, Tetrapodophis is from there, a contentious, long-bodied squamate.
Maybe it's a snake.
Maybe it's a snake. Maybe it's an early mosasaur relative. I have an opinion, but I'm not going to share it.
So do I.
With you. The contentious Brazilian compsognathid that has been repatriated and no longer carries the name Ubirajara, as well as a bunch of other pterosaurs. So there's the two species of Tupandactylus. There's also Ludodactylus is from there. There might be a Tupoxara from there. Brasiliodactylus, Lacusa vegas, and one of my favorite pterosaurs that I just learned about right now when I was reading about all these other pterosaurs, Arthrodactylus Conan Doylei.
That's really funny.
Which, yeah. No rewards for guessing who that's named after.
No relation.
It's a very important lacustrine deposit in Brazil.
Wasn't that something? Did we talk about what this crest was for?
It's display.
It's
All right, that was
display.
easy. What if it's for steering? It's not.
It's
It's
display.
display.
Okay, let's rank it.
I mean,
Yeah,
I guess
let's rank
it's for steering insofar as it didn't get in the way of the animal's ability to steer.
Sure.
Right. It's also for steering potential mates towards it.
I thought that's where you were going with it, honestly.
It's like it's like the tail lights of a car in front of a drunk driver. Thanks, Dalton.
I'm kind of struggling to wrap my heads around that because those don't steer me towards them.
Oh no! It's what
You're not
drunk
a drunk
drivers
driver.
do. Yeah, they follow the taillights in front of them.
Oh, I thought you were saying you're following the taillights of a drunk driver in front of you.
No. The drunk driver is following my taillights.
I see. Well, let's rank it.
I can see paradise by the dashboard lights.
It's not bad, other than, like, it's a pterosaur, so there's a baseline level of bad that's just gonna be present. I don't know. I don't have a lot to say about it. I have nothing to say. I'll give it an A. I think it's fine. Like, it's not any uglier than baseline pterosaur, so... And this color helps it a lot. But, like, I know what it's supposed to be. And it doesn't offend me.
Respect.
C.
Ooh.
I find it very ugly. And it is, when I was playing this game more actively, amazing how that coincides pretty much squarely with starting a YouTube channel focused on this game that I no longer play it for fun. But I would always kind of try to avoid this. And actually, Scott, are you looking at the tier list right now?
Yes.
Where is Anhanguera? Not Anhanguera. What do we call that in this game? Tupendactylus?
Tupendactylus? Yeah.
Yeah.
No.
Wait, no, not Tupendactylus. Tropignathus.
Tropignathus.
Where is that?
Tropignathus is an A.
That's bullshit. Well, it should also be in C. I hate this as much as I hate that.
Interesting.
I remember you. I remember you being very, very vocal about how much you hated Tropignathus in this game.
It is. I hate it, and I still hate it. I'm not apologetic for my hatred of these two designs. Yeah, this one, it might be a little bit better with this particular color scheme, but in general, I just kind of find it, like, ugly. And I know that's not the animal's fault. It just evolved that way, but it shouldn't have. And I give it a C. And I also give Tropignathus a C.
So I'm going to be kind to this thing. I kind of like it. I think it's very easy to make it look gremlin-y, and I really don't like the way that it sits, but I think it's adorable gremlin-y. And I really like the butterfly kind of wing kind of colors that you can give it on the head crest. I think that this is a low A. I think that they could have done a better job with depicting this critter. I would have loved if they actually did have Tapejara in the game itself, because I do think that Tapejara is a weirdly underrepresented pterosaur. Even though it's well known and everything gets called Tapejara, even though it's not necessarily 100% people's fault. Well, now it is. Google's free.
But not for long.
Oh yeah. Wait, what?
No, I'm anticipating the direction that these tech ghouls will take us.
Yeah, seriously.
The ghouls.
We love the tech ghouls.
The ghouls.
We here at the Skeleton Crew love and support the tech ghouls. I have very comfortable places for all of them along a brick wall.
So I have a lot of very comfortable places for them. Going to explore the Titanic again.
Yeah, come on, guys. You can get it this time.
It's decaying. You got to get there before it's gone.
Go! The orcas are telling you to. But yeah, I'm gonna put this at a low A. I like it more than I don't like it, and I think it's a neat little weird, but also sometimes pretty design.
Well, Scott, thank you for that valuable opinion. I realized that saying that made it sound like I was going to immediately discredit everything I was going to say, which is not really the case.
Yes.
I don't think I don't love it. I'll level with you. It's a very low B. The colors are doing a lot for me, and I do like its big, stupid head. Even though I can recognize that it's ugly, the lack of feathers are hurting me. Ooh, high C or a low B. What is a B pterosaur?
We've currently got in B Marodactylus.
Yes, which I think is criminal. I think that the Marodactylus is very
I like
nice.
that one more than this. I'm going to say a high C for Tap. I don't hate it, but there are a lot of things about it that bother me. And I do like the Marodactylus quite a bit. Yeah, well, I say I settle on low B. I see no reason to be overly cruel this eve.
My head's exactly where Alex's is right now. I don't love this. I don't hate it. This color scheme helps, but almost every other color scheme is bad, in my opinion. The patterns are nice. I think a lot of the patterns are nice, but the base colors don't work with them in any good way. I'm torn because I also now think that maybe we were a little harsh on Marodactylus, and frankly, we were too kind to Sungaripterus. The fact that it's an A is mind-boggling, and that's, I think, not because
What
of
are you talking
deficiencies in the
about?
model. It's because it's maybe the ugliest animal ever to have evolved.
I think I gave it an S, and I would give it a super S if I could. Like
Sungaripterus?
I love Sungaripterus. I think it's fantastic.
Scott,
the only thing.
How did you decorate your apartment so well if your taste is this bad?
He killed 16 Czechoslovakians.
He was a pterosaur decorator.
Oh, I do have a pterosaur as part of my decoration. I have a Rhamphorhynchus up on my wall.
Yeah, that's okay.
You give James Napoli a time machine and a shotgun, he'll become a pterosaur interior decorator.
This
Yeah, me and Alex going back in time, just dressed as like gentlemen hunters from the Victorian era with our break action shotguns.
We're going to learn the anatomy.
elephant guns.
You will learn the anatomy.
One pellet at a time.
I think this does a good job capturing the head, and the head's my favorite part of it. So that's a plus. I think that this laugh away, sickos. What? So no head?
What? So no ziti now?
No. This might be the pterosaur that suffers the most for me of not having feathers. Like, not only do I find it like it's not accurate, but I think it makes it look worse being this ugly naked thing. And it bears it. Unfortunately, it's in my mind is kind of becoming a sin eater for just the whole of how these animals are implemented in the game. Like, I really love how they did the aviaries. Like, the interconnected domes is really smart. The fact that you can send a tour through it is great. Like, it's a good way of implementing these things. But the actual behavior and rigging and like modeling of the pterosaurs, I think, leaves honestly quite a bit to be desired. Like, the fact that when they fly up, they're upside down and they're pushing against the air that should be pushing them into the ground. Like, all of these things are not problems unique to Tapejara, but for whatever reason, it's the animal that makes it looks the worse on it. I think I like Marodactylus more than it. I'm torn also between high C and low B, and I think the fact that this color scheme is so nice, and that they do highlight bright, cool colors on the display feature, is going to keep it out of C, but it's a low B for me.
I just want a quick mention that the kittens have discovered that what looks like a bird is on the screen.
Oh no.
And one of them was just off camera, but Elwood was perched on my on my microscope stand. Jesus, I'm too in the lab. On my microphone stand, and was just pawing at the screen. And you're a little troublemaker, yes. Sorry. Okay, so let's see. We have 2 A's, 2 C's, 3 C's. Dalton, are you a C?
Two low B's and 1 C. So I think that
2 low B's and 1 C. Okay. Also, Dalton, I want to compliment you for a very good use of the term "sin eater." That's a good word that doesn't get used that
it was
much.
made up in season 5 of Fargo. That's the only time it's ever come up. That's where it's from.
Is it really?
But there is a sin eater
need to-
in season 5 of Fargo, and it kicks
It's
ass.
where I learned about it. It's where I learned about the concept. Of
I really need to watch that show.
It's really good. Season 3's the best.
So I guess that makes it a B, huh?
I think that makes air quotes Tapejara a B.
I hope the viewers maybe will rewind like a few seconds to see the like flash of pleasure that crossed Amelia's face when she realized that it wouldn't be as low as James wanted. Because I saw it.
I don't think that's what that.
Sure.
I don't know what you're talking about because I didn't think about that at all.
It's amazing.
It was to your singing.
That's what it was.
Or Alex.
It's amazing that there's only one row of critters left.
Not
basically.
yet.
Not yet.
Almost.
Well, there's T-Rex. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, it's time to choose the next
Well,
one.
speaking of critters, let's choose the next
Yippee!
critter.
What are
When
gonna
we
get?
Spin.
spin.
That
That.
Wheel.
Oh God, please break. Oh no.
No.
Oh, thank God.
Oh my God.
We're not ready for it. We're just not ready.
God, I don't like that
I love-
Spinosaurus and T-Rex are going to be next to each other on the wheel.
Oh no,
the pain-
that's just
the
gonna
pain
be
zone.
that's just gonna be the pain zone.
All right, Troodon. There's stuff to say.
The tension of all of us when it was slowing down there. We're
James and I can
just
argue in
felt
circles about Paravian relationships for a whole episode.
We can.
Let's go.
Thank God. In
A
fact,
dinosaur
Alex,
that exists.
I ran a tree today, and I need to share with you some interesting Paravian results that are definitely not.
Oh, that's exciting.
That was a fun video about Tapejara, wasn't it?
I thought that was fun.
Thank God there are more pterosaurs left. But my distress over talking about pterosaurs notwithstanding, we have patrons, and they do a wonderful job of supporting this channel. We could not do this without you guys, and I can't emphasize this enough. What you contribute in support of the Skeleton Crew is integral to us being able to continue taking the time and energy we need to make these videos. And all of our patrons should consider themselves really important parts of the Skeleton Crew and the continued existence of this channel. Because without this, I don't know if we would have been able to keep this up. So thank you all. And now I'm going to thank you all by name. And by you all, I mean our patrons at Gorgosaurus tier and higher who support us at a tier where they are entitled to their name is entitled to a spoken shout out, let's just say, at the end of the video. Let's just say, as if I'm hiding something about what else it is.
Just say,
I really like how obvious it is when you're waffling trying to pull up the list and like words are attempting to be put together in an order that makes sense.
Actually, this time the words stopped coming out when I started looking at the list because my brain tried to just start reading it, and I was like, no, I have to, like, I'm seeing text.
You gotta get in here.
It's like I've got a teleprompter, but I'm not allowed to read it. Anyway, these patrons include Benjamin Seepser, nickname, Philip Fico, Christopher Bellis Jones, Aaron Anderson, Adamolos, Blacklight Virus, Camphibia, Chaotic Kaiju, Dan O'Kyrus, Dinodom, Jim Morphus Gas, Kevin Preem, King Zashu, Life Finds a Way, Max Ironpaw, Pythonic, Ryan Wants to Die, Swamp Ape Science, Wanderer, and Wheat. And this is the first week after several of you joined at this tier, so I wanted to say welcome to the crew.
Yeah,
and welcome.
indeed. Thank you.
Some of our patrons upgraded to this tier, and I think some others are completely new. Regardless, thank you all. It's phenomenal, and it's wonderful to make this section of the video a little bit longer because that's really what we needed in the Skeleton Crew. So thank you all. Rest of our patrons, please find your names in the credits of this video, and we will see you next time when we talk about Troodon, the wounding tooth, not the first dinosaur, the wounding tooth. And my lord, the taxonomy section is going to be fun.
It's going to be the video.
That'll be.
But we also
video,
have to talk about Troodontids because it's the only one in the game.
Oh yeah, right. An intro. Oh, this is going to be a long one. All right. Well, we'll see you next week.
The sculpture.
Oh God!
What you talk?
Dinosauroid.
Dinosauroid jump scare.